Hello, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this proposal, which is an initiative for learning walks at Julian Charter School. I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Hilary Bertran-Harris, also known as Hilary Gaddis, and I am the coordinator of Julian Charter School, the San Diego Academy of Performing Arts. I am currently enrolled in a master's program to receive my master's in educational leadership with a focus on technology, and then I'll be getting my admin credential, expected to be completed in December of 2017. It's also important to mention that this presentation and this proposal is in collaboration with my fellow cohort member and my colleague, Jillian Tonkin. So to begin, we want to ask ourselves why we are doing this. What is the purpose of learning walks? And so I will be reading our objective statement now. To initiate the practice of purposeful learning walks in order to impact student learning and inspire a school-wide culture of consistent and collaborative learning communities aimed at understanding, developing, and adhering to best practices. And this can be better shown through the following formula: that professional development in collaboration with professional practice equals professional growth. As an employee of Julian Charter School, I have felt very grateful to receive so many wonderful professional development opportunities, such as the leadership conferences at the University of San Diego, GAFE summits, and our own professional learning workshops that we put on forum days. But there's always the question of, what are our teachers doing with their professional learning? How are they putting it in the classroom? How are they sharing it with their colleagues? How are they using it to impact student learning? And this is really the missing piece of the puzzle, that accountability and that collaboration, which can be fulfilled through learning walks, through a professional practice of learning walks, which will ultimately result in professional growth. So I'd like to first give us a baseline understanding of what professional practice is and what models of professional practice are currently being used in education today. The three most popular models are learning walks, education rounds, and lesson study. And it's important to note that each of these models has blended together to include different parts of each other. They become a hybrid, and many school communities have drawn from different pieces of each of these to develop their own style of professional practice. So let's start with learning walks, which can be defined as a broad survey of teaching and learning ecosystems. I was first introduced to learning walks when I read The Global Achievement Gap by Tony Wagner. But since then, I've done research to understand that there are various forms of learning walks with different purposes, including ghost walks, capacity building walks, and faculty learning walks. Additionally, education rounds is a very popular method of professional practice in education today and can be defined as deeper dives into pedagogical practices. It is modeled after medical rounds, and there are really two forms of education rounds that are used most predominantly, one being teacher rounds, which is a teacher training model where novice teachers or student teachers are able to work with more master teachers and collaborate and be able to observe. And then instructional rounds, which was originally designed to be for administrators who wanted to improve things within their schools. They could go on instructional rounds. Originally, they did not include teachers as part of the observation team. One thing that education rounds and instructional rounds have done for us is to really proceduralize the process through 4 steps. 1 being to identify a problem of practice, 2 being to observe practice and apply the problem of practice, looking for evidence in classroom instruction or in student engagement. Finally, then to debrief with the walking team, with the observers, and then to determine the next level of work. The final practice that we're going to be looking at today, which is probably the oldest form of the 3 practices, is lesson study, which originated in Japan in the 19th century. And the biggest way that lesson study is different from education rounds and learning walks is that a collaborative team of teachers work to design a single lesson, and then one teacher within that group will teach the lesson while the others play the role of observers, and they all come back together and reflect. So we're going to be modeling our practice off of the 4 steps identified by City, Elmore, Thierman, and Title in Instructional Rounds course guide. We're going to start by asking ourselves what we want to struggle with this year, to determine a problem of practice we want to look for in our observations. We've already set up dates to observe within the Julian Charter School Academy communities. And then we'll also talk about the structure of the debrief and then determining next levels of work. So to begin, we want to determine a problem of practice. What do we want to struggle with this year? And struggle is the key word here because professional practice is not meant to be easy. It's meant to be challenging. It's meant for us to grapple with what we think best practices are and how we think we can most effectively impact student learning. And we want to always keep in mind that we need to be aligned with measurable outcomes and data. So this quote tells us that the process works best when it's connected to ongoing improvement and is based on data. Some examples of problems of practice or inquiries, as you could call them, are here. Are students engaged in high-level or low-level tasks? Do teachers ask high-level or low-level questions? Notice that the focus really should be on students. What are they doing? And this can be defined as the instructional core where the learning has happened. It's not meant to be a evaluation of teachers. It's meant to be an observation of practices, an observation of learning. And so it always seems to work best, what we've found in our research, when the problem of practice is focused on the students and the work that they're doing. Now, before going in for observations, we'll need to determine some walking norms because a common theme that comes up with professional practice of this sort is that we want to build buy-in and trust from the teachers who will be hosting these observations and will be hosting the walking team. We want them to welcome us. We want them to feel comfortable and confident to know that this is not an evaluation of them, but we're gathering data in order to improve the school community as a larger body. So some of the norms we might consider are how many walkers per group instruction meeting area, how many people on walking teams. Research cites that 5 is probably the maximum with perhaps a group leader, so then maybe 6. But no more than that. Jillian and I will also be developing an observation practice guide so that the observers have a note-taking sheet to be able to scribe and write down. But we're asking ourselves, is this something we want observers working with during the observation? Or should they not be walking into classrooms with clipboards and pencils, which could create a significant amount of anxiety for the host teacher? We've also discussed, do we think it's appropriate to have a scripter or perhaps just one person taking notes as opposed to the entire team, so that there is an objective portrayal of what was seen and heard in the observation. Because what research suggests is that although there'll be, say, 5 observers in the classroom, you might have 5 different perspectives of what actually was happening. And so a scripture would serve as an objective guide as to be able to rely upon when there were questions or debate about what was actually said or seen or heard. And then finally, we'll want to consider how we're going to navigate through our debrief, which is the most important part of the learning walk, where the discussion leaders will lead us in questions to hopefully to analyze our practice, to analyze what we saw. And then how we'll be able to give feedback to the teachers, because that is something we do want to do this year, is we want the teachers to be able to get feedback. If they have observers coming through their room, then they should hear from us, and primarily positive, if not all positive this year, because this year is really about building trust with this initiative. We really hope that in years to come, if this is successful, that teachers will become part of walking teams, and it will become really a consistent collaborative school-wide practice. So it's really important that this year we launch it in the appropriate positive way. So now these 3 steps, which are cited by title in Improving Teaching and Learning Through Instructional Rounds, help us to navigate the observation debrief, to understand what should be happening during that time, starting with description, describing what we saw, what we heard, as objective as possible. Again, here is where the scripter could come in. Another suggestion would be to videotape the lesson. And so if we need to refer back to an objective source during the debrief, that we would have that opportunity. And then once we could agree upon what we saw and heard, to analyze what we saw in the observation and to look for patterns across different classrooms and different observations. And then finally, to make predictions and connect it to student learning and ask ourselves, what causes the learning that we want to see? Again, this could be referred to as the instructional core, how the teacher, the content, and the student are coming together to work together to create the instructional task, which demonstrates the learning that's happening. And so with this initiative and the introduction of this initiative, we are left with our next steps, which will be to start by building trust with our teachers. And we're going to start with our first group of host teachers, which will be on September 26th. We had planned to attend the San Diego Academy of Arts and Sciences and the San Diego Academy of Creative and Critical Thought for Learning Walk. So prior to that, Jillian and I will be reaching out to these teachers and meeting with them to help them understand the Learning Walk initiative, what we are doing to help them feel comfortable and confident to know that this is not an evaluation of their teaching, but rather we are looking to conduct research and to gather data that we hope will improve student learning and will create a collaborative, supported culture of professional practice within Julian Charter School. And then, of course, we'll have our learning walk on the 26th. And if all goes well, then we'll make a plan to continue the process and to communicate with the rest of the academies throughout the course of the school year. So I want to say thank you for your time. If you would like to contact me, you can reach me through my website or by emailing me directly or through Twitter at my Twitter handle @HillaryGaddis _Gaddis. Thank you so much.